Good morning, all. Good morning. Happy Easter. Happy Feast of St. Mark's. And happy conversation. It's good to be with y'all again. We are in the middle of our Easter season series. Remember, this year in Adult Formation, we've been following a sort of catechumenate track, a track of study and preparation that the baptismal candidates from the early church would have followed and have followed. And so the season after Easter is meant to be one in which we reflect on those mysteries and what the implication is for our lives. And there's a great, fun, fancy word that you can pronounce or mispronounce, however you like. You may hear mystagogia or mystagogia, which is the name for that sense of reflecting on the Paschal mysteries and letting it infiltrate our lives. So our theme for this way of doing that in the series is we're hearing from people week to week about how they are living into the resurrection, how the Christian life looks expressed in their moment in time. And so this morning we've invited some who are well known to us. We've got Luke Merritt, one of our youth interns, and Danny Jaime, who is sharing with Luke in the inaugural cohort of the Community of Saints Francis and Clare, which is happening as a program of St. Peter's Church in Kerrville. And they're going to tell you all about that. But we thought that this was a great fit for hearing how some of these young adults are listening to the call of God and letting the claims of resurrection take root in their lives. So they're going to talk about their disciplines of prayer and study and service this spring. And I just want to say that we know that our youth choristers are going to have to slip out a little bit early to vest and serve in their music roles. So they're not storming out on their youth intern. They're living into their service as well. So Luke and Danny, I'm going to hand it over to you all, and maybe y'all introduce your friends who are with you today.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Luke Merritt. A little bit about me, if you haven't seen me before. Hopefully you have. I'm from Port Aransas. I moved up to San Antonio about 5 years ago for school, and I've been working here at St. Mark's as a youth ministry intern for the past 3 years now this May. I'm excited to be here with a couple friends from the community of St. Francis and Clare, and this is my friend Danny.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to meet you. It's my first time here at St. Mark's. As was mentioned, my name is Danny Jaime. I am from Brownsville, Texas, down in the Rio Grande Valley. I grew up there. I grew up Episcopalian. And then I came to school at UTSA here in San Antonio, but I never had the privilege of coming to this beautiful church. So thank you for welcoming me. And thank you, Luke, for inviting me to this for this amazing opportunity to talk about what we do.
We also have another member of our cohort here, Bill. He is over there. And we have Ava, who is visiting us from the community at the Crossing in New York, just for a few weeks, another intentional young adult community. So she's sharing some things that she's learned in her experience there and kind of reflecting on what we're doing and how to improve and help us. So it's been a great resource. So, maybe. Yes, what is the Community of St. Francis and Clare? Otherwise known as the CFC, we are a group of young adults trying to live a more intentional, prayerful, and simple life with God. It's not just for clergy, it's not a monastic order, and it's not about having everything figured out. It's about taking the wisdom of ancient Christian practices, things like daily prayer, simplicity, service, and community, and actually living them out in the middle of our modern lives. So we still have jobs, responsibilities, relationships. We're not separated from the world, but we're trying to live differently within it. We believe that the rhythms developed in monastic life can be more accessible to everyone, and that they can shape how anyone lives their faith today. So the CFC is really about structure and intentionality. It's about asking, what would it look like to build a life where God isn't an afterthought, but the center? And then actually putting that practice in a place to make that real. So we'll share quick reasons why we personally got involved. I guess I'll share a little bit more. We're up in Kerrville. We're at the St. Peter's Episcopal Church up there. So we actually live on the campus up there. They have these apartments, buildings that we live in. And we share daily meals together and we live together and just have a great time. So very cool. Reasons why we personally got involved. I obviously, I've been working here for quite a few years and growing deeper in my faith and trying to learn a whole lot more and looking for deeper structure and purpose within my faith. I had plenty of opportunity to pour myself out onto others, and I was looking for an opportunity to be poured into. And so this was a perfect opportunity for me. I was getting pretty deep into my own studies on my own time, trying to balance school and work and working here and trying to spend every hour that I had, reading and studying, watching YouTube videos. And it was good, it was fulfilling, but it wasn't enough for me. And it was, and so I got very obsessed with some of my youth lessons. Some of my youth group guys will know that I get pretty deep into some things sometimes, probably some intense theology for a 12-year-old, but it's good. I enjoy it. And so while I was working here, while Matt, our beloved Matt Wise, was here, he was telling me that, I'm spending a little bit too much time studying, and I should save it for seminary. But that didn't feel like a good enough answer for me. So I was looking for something that I could get involved with. And I learned about this program and really didn't know anything about it until I went up and checked it out. And it was kind of a last minute decision, probably to the shock of the clergy here. They thought I was running off to Kerrville forever, but I want to be a part of a program that I could, grow more deeply in my faith and live it out in a daily practice. So yes. How long? Whatever you got.
That's really good, Luke. And it's people like Luke in youth ministry that kind of pour into people and pour into someone like me from a very young age that kind of became the motivation as to why I want to do the things that I do. But if I could take you back all the way to when I was a little boy, I grew up going to church, and I grew up surrounded by community that loved and raised me. And so I've always loved church. I loved being in Vacation Bible School as a kid. I loved youth ministry as a teen. And so when the time came to come to college, I knew that I wanted to go deeper in my faith. And so when I first came to San Antonio about 13 years ago, I was hanging out by Travis Park, and St. Mark's was giving away clothes, and we were just walking around, and we thought that was a cool thing. And I realized, hey, here's an Episcopal church in San Antonio that's really nice. I know a lot of other young people from San Antonio that are Episcopalian, and that kind of influenced why I wanted to come to school in San Antonio. And so in college, I pursued my faith. It really solidified my faith as a Christian, but my belief in our community as Episcopalians. And so all throughout college, I was involved in ministry work. After college, I worked with Good Samaritan Community Services and did camps and conferences ministry at camp. And, I realized, why do I love doing this? Why do I love doing ministry? What's going on here? What is this deeper calling? I know in the Episcopal Church, they see young people and they love to ask them if they're ever going to think about the priesthood. And that was a question that was thrown on me from a young age. And I always thought, what a nice thing it would be to work in the church. But as I got older, I realized this is a very serious question. How do I figure this out? I put it away for a long time, but in the last few years as a missionary, I realized that working for the church is something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I don't know what that would look like, but I started thinking about it. I started praying about it. And like I did, or like it was done for me as a very young child and as a teenager, I turned to my community and I asked them, what should I do? And they told me about this community of Saints Francis and Clare in Kerrville. And I thought about it, I sat on it, but it seemed like the people that really cared about me the most thought that this would be the right next step. And so I applied and I came on board. And my reason for coming to this community was to grow even deeper in my faith and to figure out this question that I've been wrestling with for a long time and really try to get to the bottom of it. I mentioned that I was a missionary, or that I am a missionary. I work for a ministry called Manos de Dios that goes down to Honduras twice a year. And I love serving the people there. And I think that I've discovered that I want to become better equipped. And so that was kind of the basis of why maybe discernment and ordination seems like the right next step now. And thankfully, I feel like I figured it out during my time at St. Francis and Clare. And so I'm really grateful for the time that I spent with people like Lou, Bill, and Ava, and our friends. But I think really, it was in my heart that God was calling me to that. So anyway.
Part of our program is forming young people into disciples of Christ who are very strengthened in their faith and live it out in a daily practice. But it's also an opportunity for us to discern our paths for life, and not necessarily for an ordained ministry, but for all aspects of our life. And so it's a great opportunity for us to do that, to have that time in that space. When I heard about the program, I thought it was kind of crazy and intense, and I didn't know anything about it. And when I heard about it the next time at the Discovery Retreat in November, I heard that Danny was doing it, and I thought, if this guy's into it, then maybe it's not so bad. And so I looked into it a lot more. And so it's been great. Danny and I were both counselors at Camp Capers for quite a few years, so we've known each other for a long time. So it's been great. Part of my deep, intense studies, I guess, that I was doing by myself was looking into monasticism in a lot of different aspects and different places in the world. And so this program was described to me as a semi-monastic program where we are not in order, but we are living into these monastic practices, following the examples of St. Francis and St. Clare in our daily practices as we follow Jesus. And so when I was given the opportunity to speak, I thought about how much I could go into niche detail about the intense history of the monastics and talk about that for 45 minutes, but I decided I won't do that, and I'll just go through it quickly, just a little bit. So, all right. So the Desert Fathers are widely recognized as the founders of Christian monasticism. Beginning in the 3rd and 4th centuries, these early Christians left the growing cities of the Roman Empire and went out into the deserts of Egypt, Palestine, and Syria. This was happening at a time when Christianity was becoming more accepted, especially after Constantine legalized the faith. As Christianity became more culturally normal, some believers began to feel that it was losing its sense of radical commitment. So in response, the Desert Fathers didn't leave the world because it was too sinful, but because they desired a life of undistracted devotion to God. So they lived mostly as hermits, some of them in small communities. Their lives were marked by intense prayer, fasting, and simplicity, and deep self-discipline. They memorized scripture, practiced silence, and sought to confront their own inner struggles, things like pride, temptation, anger, and ego. So one of the most well-known figures among them is Anthony the Great, who is back on this side, known by many different names: of Egypt, the abbot, of the desert, the anchorite, the hermit. So he was one of the most influential figures, often called the father of monasticism. He gave away all his possessions after hearing the words of Jesus to sell what you have, and spent decades in the desert pursuing a life centered entirely on God. So at its core, their movement was about intentionality, removing distraction in order to create space for God. Their legacy is the foundation of monastic life, built on prayer, simplicity, and community, and their wisdom continues to shape Christian spirituality even today. So on the right, we have the Syrian fathers, and on the left is the Egyptian fathers. Some great guys. So moving on from there, St. Francis, one of the guys who we're named after. If you don't know about St. Francis, incredibly interesting guy, and I could not give him justice to try and explain the amount of incredible things that he's done throughout his life. But he was born into a wealthy family in medieval Italy and lived a comfortable, even somewhat indulgent life in his early teen years. However, after a series of spiritual experiences, he felt a profound call to follow Christ in a radically literal way. Taking seriously Jesus' call to give up possessions and care for the poor, Francis publicly renounced his wealth. In an intense move, when he was in an argument with his father, the bishop asked him to mediate in a public square, and when he renounced everything from his father, his title, all his possessions, he actually stripped down all of his clothes, completely naked in the square, in extreme act of humility and poverty. And that's a practice that we are encouraged not to emulate at the CFC. But a very powerful thing that he did. And he didn't set out to create a complex theological system. Instead, he developed a simple and lived a rule of life centered on prayer, service, and total reliance on God. So he and his followers traveled, preached, and served the poor and embraced a life of joyful simplicity. What made Francis so compelling was not just what he said, but how he embodied it. His life became a visible expression of the gospel, marked by humility, joy, and a deep love for both people and creation. So if you want to tell us a little bit about Claire.
So the other half of our namesake as a community refers to Clare of Assisi, who some would consider the other half of the kind of movement that St. Francis started. But the reality is that she was her own person, and it's important to recognize all of the things that she did, not just in reference to St. Francis, but in her own right. Clare of Assisi was born into a noble family and was deeply inspired by Francis's example. In a bold and countercultural decision, she left behind her life of wealth and status to follow the same path of radical devotion to God. While Francis is often remembered for his movement and outward mission, Clare's contribution was equally important, but expressed in a different way. Clare founded a community of women, later known as the Poor Clares, and committed herself to a life of stability, prayer, and deep spiritual devotion. Rather than traveling and preaching, she remained rooted in one place, cultivating a life centered on contemplation and community. She wrote her own rule of life, something very rare for a woman at the time, and fought to preserve a commitment to absolute poverty for her community. Where Francis represents movement and mission, Clare represents depth and faithfulness. Her life demonstrates that transformation doesn't only happen through going out into the world, but also through remaining, praying, and being deeply grounded in God. Together, Francis and Clare offer a complete picture of the Christian life, one that moves outward in love and service, and one that is rooted inwardly in prayer and devotion.
So when we look at the lives of Francis and Clare, we're not just looking at inspiring figures from history. We're seeing a pattern, a way of life that was deeply intentional, structured around prayer, rooted in simplicity, and poured out in love for others. And that pattern didn't start with them, it goes all the way back to the Desert Fathers, with this consistent thread in Christian history of people asking, what does it actually look like to center my entire life around God? What's powerful is that even through their contexts, we're completely different from ours. The core of their lives is still incredibly relevant. The same struggles still exist: distraction, comfort, and inconsistency. And the same solution keeps showing up: intentional rhythms that create space for God. So for us, we don't just use them as inspirational figures. We're seeking how to follow Christ through their examples. And that's what the CFC is really trying to do. Not just admire these lives, but translate them into a modern application. To take these same core principles and build them into a modern everyday context. And that takes shape for us in four main areas, what we like to call the 4 S's. Let's skip ahead. The first one is service. So when we joined the community, we had an opportunity during the first couple weeks to interview people, representatives from different community organizations and service organizations in Kerrville. And after the floods on July 4th, there was quite a number of them. And so we had an opportunity to learn about all these different ones and figure out which ones fit best with what our calling was and what our different vocations were and our different ministries. And just to learn about them. And as disciples of Christ, we believe that service to our neighbor isn't just an act of obedience, but one of love. And each of our disciples use our gifts as a vessel on this earth to be a spirit and conduit for love and a physical manifestation of his hands and feet on the earth. So these disciples have ventured out in the community of Kerr County to spread their love and dedicate themselves to the service of others. So we have Cece, who mentors at Hunt Elementary School with the kids there, and she serves at an animal shelter. We have Bill over here, who serves at the Heart of the Hills Heritage Center, digging into the history of Kerr County for preservation purposes. Melanie works to advocate for folks on the margins of society to bridge the gap of unmet needs in the long-term flood recovery efforts. I work at the youth group up there, and I work with Peterson Hospice, volunteering with people on hospice and doing visits and things with them. And Danny works at Hunt Elementary, so we're going to share a little bit about what we do there at our service sites.
Yep. So, we all know, a year ago, on the 4th of July, this community experienced a incredibly tragic occurrence. At the center of that, although it affected the entire Hill Country, and Kerrville certainly, it was the community of Hunt where I think a lot of us really felt our heart break for the children there. And I was actually at Camp Capers when this happened, and all I could think was, I wish there was something I could do. I saw the children that we served who, in lots of ways, were affected indirectly or directly. And all I could think of was, where do I fit into this? Maybe it was a selfish thought, but maybe it was coming from God. And I prayed about that. And the privilege that I get to share with everybody now is that I work directly with the kids that are at the heart of this tragic story. So out in Hunt, they have a school that is an elementary and a middle school. And when I joined this program, as I thought about the service placement that I would be a part of, I talked to Father Rich about how I love working with youth, with children, especially those that look like me and grew up like me and needed someone like me. And I was asked to be a reading mentor at Hunt schools. And so I have the wonderful privilege of going out there 4 days out of the week to read with 3 kindergartners who need extra help with their reading skills, and 3 middle schoolers who just need someone to help them along. And so what I do out there is I take my kids to the library and we read our favorite stories. I practice their sight words with them. Or sometimes we play Lego because I know that they need some joy in their life. And the same thing with our middle schoolers. Sometimes I play soccer with them. Sometimes I read with them. I ask them about their lives. But I think the surprising thing for me was the kind of resilience that exists in this community. As I was working to give them joy and teach them something, they were teaching me and sharing their joy with me. And I can't think that that's not a mere coincidence, or that it's just a mere coincidence. I think this is a gift from God. I think that although our most vulnerable were the ones that suffered during this tragedy, they're also the champions of our faith and our future. They truly are the kingdom. And so I get to participate in that kingdom when I go out to the Hunt schools.
After a lot of the efforts to clean up the area, conservation efforts and different things, rebuilding homes, the lasting impacts and the need is for spiritual presence up there. And that's something that St. Peter's is very good at, and they're very integrated within the community and offering that help for a lot of people. And also by doing chapel out there at Hunt on Sundays and offering services out there. So it's a really incredible opportunity for us to be a part of that community during this time. And as they're still recovering, and tragedies like that, the needs are not met for a long time. So we're very grateful that they welcomed us into the community after that very difficult time. Part of the thing I do up there is I work with Peterson Health. I work at hospice, so I do different hospice visits with them, depending on what the patients need. Sometimes it's just sitting with them and talking. Sometimes I go to the memory care facility and play guitar for the patients there. Sometimes I go to the nursing home and play bingo. And let me tell you, some of those patients, they do not play about their bingo. They come there to win, and they are very, very serious about it. But it's a very incredible opportunity for me to be involved in people at a vulnerable time in their life, at the end of their life, when they really need help and that comfort and that spiritual presence there. So I'm very grateful to be a part of that and to be welcomed into that time in their lives. So the next S that we have is spirituality. So we have daily prayer practices and spiritual practices that are central to our lives at the CFC. Like many monastic communities, the rhythm of our schedule is centered around the liturgy of the daily office. We regularly lead morning prayer, inviting members of the St. Peter's community to start their days with us in the sanctuary. Then we have noonday prayer, evening prayer, and Compline that we practice together by the members of the CFC, and we deepen our bond with each other and with God. So Father Rich leads us in a dedicated time for spiritual practices every morning, where we explore different styles of prayer. We host a dinner church service once a month where we invite local young adults to a home-cooked meal and Eucharist service. And of course, the spirituality of our community doesn't just end with the time we spend in prayer. By being the hands and feet of God, we take those prayers with us into the world. So this is a photo of us in the sanctuary there, where we get the opportunity to lead morning prayer, and it is a very, very cool thing to do, and I enjoy it very much. So the next S we have is study. Through the study aspect of our program, we take time to understand Franciscan theology with once-a-week classes on St. Francis and St. Clare. We also read the Gospels together and have guided Bible study once a week. We want to attempt to form our lives in the way of St. Francis and St. Clare's examples. In addition, we have access to the church library and independent theological studies. In our studies at the CFC, we're working towards following Jesus to the best of our ability and grounding ourselves in Scripture. We also have a variety of weekly guest speakers, ranging from priests, friars, doctors, and professors of theology, and lay people involved in different ministries. And so it's a very incredible opportunity to have these people come out and teach us about the ministries they're involved in and give us different talks where we can pester them with a billion theological questions and just, have that opportunity to learn from some really experienced and some really knowledgeable people. So we're very grateful for that. Also, a part of our study aspect is that we all came into the program. We weren't new into the faith. We were all kind of nerds about different things in our different ways. And so towards the end of our program, we start working on our independent studies. So we have a chance to really dive into these things and spend time to study and kind of form them into something that we can share with other people. And so very quickly, we will share what ours are because they're kind of nerdy and intense, and we could go on about them for a very long time. But part of my thing is that I'm interviewing different people it's kind of an ecumenical study, interviewing people, young adults of all different faith practices and traditions, and seeing the things that they are practicing on a daily basis, different things on a weekly basis, and how they relate to the ancient practices of the monastics and how they independently kind of mimic them, and then showing different ways that we can implement some of these other monastic practices into our daily lives in a modern context, and then going from there and applying them so we can deepen our spiritual faith, something I'm very interested in. Danny, share yours quick.
Sure. Thank you. So St. Francis, right? This amazing guy who loved being out in nature. You really learn to appreciate God by sitting in creation. And if you're familiar with the Canticle of the Creatures that's associated with St. Francis, you can appreciate how much he sees God through his creation. And in fact, he shares this idea that creation is God's first gospel, that we can learn about God through his creation and learn about who he is in relation to us and what our part in the story is. And so I really took that idea and thought about my fascination with nature and creation, particularly of the extinct variety, such as dinosaurs and things like that. And I want to square this idea of extinction and creatures dying with St. Francis's idea of creation being God's first gospel. How does that part fit into that story? What have people said in the past that we can learn about the past and how do I square that idea with God being all loving and all purposeful. It's a very interesting thing to me. I think it gives an opportunity to explore a bridge between this idea of science and religion, which I think is a false dichotomy. But I think that in this paper and this essay, I'd love to bridge those two ideas and see where God fits into that and how St. Francis might have understood it with this idea of creation being God's first gospel.
So our fourth S is simplicity. So we got service, study. What is it? I always forget that. I got it right here. Service, spirituality, study, and simplicity. So the lives of St. Francis and Clare are marked by simple living. This simplicity includes minimizing distractions and trappings of the world in order to maximize our time with each other and with God. In our endeavor to achieve this, the members of this cohort have decided to live as simply as possible by living with minimal possessions, relying on each other for our daily needs, and seeking the divine in what some would consider mundane. By relying on the generosity of others, we've chosen to leave behind ordinary lives so we can focus on our service to the world. The community of St. Peter's Episcopal has come together in incredible ways to help us live into that vision for ourselves and through their gracious welcoming, and they have to provide for us. Part of our simplicity practices is wearing these robes. They kind of mimic Franciscan habits, but we call them have-nots because they are not habits. Again, we live into these practices, but we are not a monastic order, and so we don't want to emulate them too closely. So there are some key differences, but these are things that we wear for our spiritual practices in our daily prayer when we're out in the community and at church. And it's something that kind of strips us down and makes us uniform, and they're kind of brown and drab and boring, and I guess it makes us feel more simple-minded and connected with each other. Another part of our uniform, I guess, is these tau crosses that we wear. So these come from the Franciscan tradition, from the history of the tau cross, which I won't get into too much. But what is very unique about these is that we were all given these at the beginning of our time there, and they are actually made from trees that fell during the flood. And so a member of the community made these crosses for us and inscribed different words on them. Mine says helper. I'm not sure what yours says.
Mine says loved.
So different descriptions for kind of how we feel in our lives, different values that we kind of live into in different ways, and they feel very connected and personal to us. So it's a very unique thing that we can to remember that we are integrated into this community, though we weren't there and a part of it during that time. But this is a very special gift that we were given. So we're very grateful for these. So after all that, at the end of the week, we have our Adventure Fridays, where we go off into the wider world. We hop in this old church van that we have, and we go off together and, sing songs and go down the road together. And we do different things. We go on different hikes at Guadalupe State Park, Lost Maples. We went to the LBJ Museum. We hung out at Luckenbach. Tons of different things. One of the cool things that we were able to do was do the San Antonio Missions Camino Pilgrimage, where we walk through all the different missions throughout San Antonio, and it's very long. I think we didn't do the entire thing, sadly, because of weather, but we did about 10 or 11 miles. So it was very cool to see all these different churches and to see that history there and to talk to a real Franciscan friar, and it was very cool. And Danny has done the Camino, so he had a lot of things to add about what different pilgrimages are like, and so it was very cool to have his perspective and experience on that. Which we're very grateful for again. Another thing that we were able to do was our silent retreat at Mustang Island Conference Center, where we spent 5 days in silence, not talking, kind of having time to focus on reading into the biography of St. Clare and to focus on our daily prayer rhythms and things that could connect us deeply to God in a contemplative setting. And it was a very unique experience. It was a very difficult experience, I got to say. At first, I was very nervous about not talking for 5 days. I didn't know how I'd possibly do that. And the first day was a struggle, but by the last day, I felt like I had grown so much in those days, and that I thought I would have a billion things to say by the end as soon as I could talk. But actually, I found that I had nothing that I really wanted to say. That I had learned that the things that we say on a daily basis maybe are kind of used to fill up space or time, and are not actually very useful things. And so it felt like a very good learning experience. Something that I felt very great for me was that the only words that I was saying throughout that time were prayers. And so all the words I was speaking were prayers that week, and it felt incredible. I don't know. It was just a very beautiful thing to have that opportunity, because I don't know. Sometimes I like to say that everybody kind of needs to shut up for a few days. So like, it was very cool to have that time to not need to do anything. And so we learned a lot from it. And I don't know if you want to share anything that you experienced during that time.
I agree completely. Sometimes words get in the way. And I think silence really is where God speaks, because it allows you to listen and really focus on the things that matter. I like to talk my way out of things and through things. And so for me, it was really a trial to just enjoy being quiet for once. And I learned a lot. I learned that the important things, you don't really have to say them. You just do them for somebody or with somebody. And so that was really special. And it also gave me time to pay attention to the things that we sometimes take for granted or not look at or hear. So that time that we spent at Mustang Island Conference Center, it was a beautiful place to really just sit still and listen and see God in ways that you might not get a chance to.
It's a very cool experience. Definitely recommend it for everybody, though it is intense and hard sometimes. But yes, part of the time that we were there, we spent 11 days at Mustang Island. We also had a conference with young adults who came. And at the beginning of the week, we also had an opportunity to go to Trinity by the Sea. And I was welcomed back into the community that I grew up in. And Father James Sturkitz was very welcoming and allowed me to read and be a Eucharistic minister and be a part of that service. So I was it was a very cool experience to be able to come back there and share some of the things that I learned and be a part of that community again. Another opportunity we had was to speak at council. A very cool time to experience the wider Episcopal community throughout Texas, and to be connected in different ministries in different ways, and to meet a billion different priests and ask a bunch of different questions and learn more about what it means to be an Episcopalian in many different contexts. And we were granted this opportunity to speak about our program there. And I, hopefully you can't see it too much, but public speaking has always been a big fear for me. So this was like horrible. You can see how pale I was. I was terrified in front of hundreds of people. I looked so scared. This photo is just so funny to me, but it was a very great opportunity to be up there and to share a little bit about what we do and to, So I don't know if you have any. Thank you.
No, it was an awesome time. It's like, I don't know how to put it, but it's kind of like your favorite TV show crossover with your other favorite TV show, because everybody was there. It was like the ultimate crossover movie event kind of thing. But really, it gave a chance for people to meet new people, friends of mine to meet other friends of mine, and really just feel like we're all part of the same body of Christ. It was a great experience. And again, to visit Luke's old stomping grounds and to be a part of God's creation on the coastal bend, an incredible time. And so really, really grateful for that opportunity.
The last part of it is we end with a pilgrimage to Assisi in Italy, a very cool opportunity where we get to go to where St. Francis and St. Clare are from. So on May 17th, we'll be leaving for a couple weeks to go there. The first week we'll be spending going throughout Rome and going throughout the Italian countryside, visiting different religious sites. And then the second week we will spend at Laverna, which is a monastic community there, where we will have a personal Franciscan friar being our tour guide for the entire week. So we are very excited to do that. Part of the ending of this program is that it's a radical change for a lot of us living this kind of life from what we are used to. And so we want to have a very meaningful transition back into our lives. And so this is meant as that opportunity so that we're not just drop back off into the world, where we actually get to experience something together and to dive more deeply into our faith and visit a lot of different cool religious sites, and then to be able to kind of transition back into our lives and keep a lot of these spiritual practices with us. So we're very excited for that. We'll be leaving in a couple weeks. Yeah. And I will finish up quick because I want to have an opportunity if anybody has any questions. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is very simple, but also very serious. We're trying to build lives where God is not just someone where we believe in, but someone we actually live with daily. The Desert Fathers left everything to create space for God. Francis of Assisi and Claire of Assisi showed us what it looks like to live that out in the world with both movement and depth. And we're trying to do that in the CFC and take that same vision and ask, what does it mean to look like? What does this look like here today in our lives? Because the truth is, the church doesn't need just one more program. It needs people, young adults who are deeply formed, people rooted in prayer and shaped by scripture and committed to a life that actually reflects Christ. And that's what this is about. It's not about perfection, not having it all together, but choosing day by day to live intentionally with God. So whether it means joining something like the CFC or simply starting with 10 minutes of prayer a day, the invitation is the same: to take your faith seriously enough to structure your life around it. If you feel drawn to that, if something in this resonates with you, or you know somebody this would resonate with, please, we'd love to talk to them, get us in contact with them. And we love your support as we continue forward. This is fully funded by fundraising, by generous donations throughout the diocese and throughout the nation, and mostly from St. Peter's community, who have been very gracious and helpful in welcoming us in there and raising money for the past couple years for us to be welcome there. Something I didn't say is that this is intended to be a 9-month-long program following the academic year. Because of the floods and things, we were not able to join in September, so it was pushed back to January. So we've been there since January and will end in May. But the next community will begin at the end of August and continue until May from there, and that's the intention of that community. So we want this to remain accessible to all, so there's zero cost required to join. And like I said, we're fully funded by fundraising, and we're very grateful for all the support that we have received. And lastly, to end, I know Father Rich will be coming at the end of June to guest preach, so he just wanted me to put that out there to get y'all excited ahead of that, because he's very grateful to be able to be here and have that opportunity. So, anything else, Leslie?
Just want to, again, thank you all for receiving me with open arms. And I want to thank Luke for the invitation. That's what the church needs. And I think that's what the community at Saints Francis and Claire wants to be and wants to do. And so I just invite you to continue with that open posture of welcoming people, to just receive them as they are and to listen to them and see where God grows them that way. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right. If anybody has any questions, we are willing to answer. We got most around time. Who? What? Actually? I thought he was a Scientologist. I don't believe that. What a crazy guy. Well, good for him, I guess. I don't know. Everybody could use it. Yeah, that's a bit crazy. Oh, we have 5 who live there right now, and we have space for much more. We are the first cohort, so we are looking to expand as much as we can, and so we're very grateful to have that amount of people there with us right now.
Thank you, Luke. So you guys actually, as a group of seven of you, is that right? 7?
We started with 7. Yeah, we have. It is a long program, so we had a couple people leave, but now we're ending with 5.
Do you do your meals together?
We do. So we make dinner together every night, which is a very cool thing to do. But it's a learning experience for some of us how to cook, for sure. But yeah, it's a great chance for us to sit down at the end of the night, to share a meal just as Jesus would, and to be able to talk and communicate with our fellow disciples and to talk things out and have that opportunity. So it's very cool to be able to do that every day. Fields? Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having us.
Thank you.
Good job. That's it.